The Prince took a step back from active royal duties in the wake of his interview with the BBC in 2019.
Behind the golden gates of Buckingham Palace, a storm is quietly building. Whispers are spreading through the corridors of power, whispers that the crown itself may no longer be secure. King Charles's fragile health has become the palace's most closely guarded secret, but now that silence has been broken. In a move that's left even senior royals in disbelief, Princess Anne has confirmed something that could change the monarchy forever. This isn't just another royal headline. It's the moment the future of the British crown was thrown into uncertainty. Late-night meetings, urgent phone calls, and tense faces behind closed doors, the atmosphere inside the palace has shifted. Every decision being made now carries the weight of history. For decades, the Windsors have endured scandal, betrayal, and heartbreak. But this time, the threat isn't coming from the outside. It's coming from within. And in a family built on silence and tradition, one voice has dared to speak. Because when Princess Anne steps forward, the world listens, and what she just confirmed has left the entire nation in shock. The silence inside the palace. The morning light fell differently that day over Buckingham Palace. It was colder, quieter, as if the walls themselves could sense that something inside was breaking. In the private quarters where royal footsteps usually echoed with calm routine, the air felt heavy with unspoken truths. Courtiers moved slowly, their eyes lowered, their whispers softer than usual. Everyone knew, though no one dared to say it aloud, the king was unwell. For weeks, the palace had tried to keep it hidden. Official statements used carefully chosen words like rest, routine checkups, and a temporary adjustment of duties. But behind closed doors, the truth was much more fragile. King Charles's health had been declining faster than anyone expected. His public smiles had grown thinner. His once steady hands now trembled slightly when he lifted a pen. Cameras caught it. Advisors denied it. Yet inside those ancient halls, denial could no longer silence fear. Princess Anne was the first to confront it. The devoted sister, known for her discipline and duty, had seen enough. She had watched her brother push through engagements despite exhaustion, refusing to step back, insisting that the crown demanded endurance. But even Anne, the most steadfast of them all, could see the toll it was taking. In a quiet meeting with senior courtiers, she said what no one else had the courage to say. "The king cannot continue like this." Her words fell like a hammer against centuries of royal silence. That statement, confirmed later by sources close to the princess, became the moment everything changed. For the first time, the royal household faced a reality it could not control with press releases or polished smiles. The queen consort, Camilla, sat in quiet disbelief. She had been Charles's strength through public storms, through Diana's shadow, through the weight of criticism, through the difficult journey to the throne. But this was different. This was a battle no image could repair, no headline could soften. As the news spread among inner circle aides, the atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace shifted from formality to quiet panic. Schedules were reviewed, engagements were postponed, on medical advice. Aides began discreetly preparing contingency plans, the kind that are written in sealed envelopes and kept in locked drawers, never meant to be opened until absolutely necessary. And in the center of it all stood Princess Anne, calm, composed, and determined. Her confirmation to the advisors was not meant to cause chaos, it was meant to prepare the monarchy for what was coming. She knew that every decision made now would echo through history. She understood what few others dared admit. If the king could not carry his duties, someone would have to step forward, and that someone could change everything about the future of the crown. Meanwhile, the public began noticing subtle shifts. Prince William's calendar grew heavier. His appearances became more symbolic. Catherine's speeches took on a new confidence, a new authority. To the outside world, it looked like a natural evolution, the next generation taking on more responsibility. But those within the palace knew the truth. It wasn't just preparation, it was protection. The crown was being quietly repositioned. Late one evening, as the palace lights dimmed and rain tapped against the windows, Anne visited her brother's private study. The king sat near the fire, his shoulders bent, his expression weary. She didn't bow, didn't offer formalities. She simply looked at him and said, "You've given everything you had. It's time to think of what comes next." Charles didn't answer immediately. For a long moment, he stared into the fire, watching the flames rise and fall like the weight of his own legacy. He had waited his entire life for the crown and endured decades in the shadow of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II. And now, barely 2 years into his reign, he was being asked to consider stepping aside. The thought was unbearable, yet the reality was unavoidable. Anne's words weren't cold. They were filled with the kind of honesty only a sister could offer. She wasn't speaking as a royal, she was speaking as family. And in that moment, Charles realized what the rest of the world would soon come to understand. The monarchy was entering a new and uncertain era. Outside the palace gates, journalists camped in the rain, chasing whispers. Unconfirmed reports about the king's health, they said, growing concern inside Buckingham Palace. The public could sense something was wrong, but no one could imagine how serious it had become. Inside, aides began drafting statements, not to release, but to have ready, just in case. In the following days, the palace's silence became deafening. The official channels said nothing, yet the Queen's absence from several engagements spoke volumes. Then came the moment that shook the entire nation. A brief but powerful statement from Princess Anne, confirming that the king was undergoing treatment and would be reducing his public duties for the foreseeable future. Those few words, spoken calmly, set off a wave of emotion across Britain. The nation that had only just adjusted to a new monarch after the Queen's passing now faced the possibility of another transition. In the streets of London, people gathered outside the palace gates, leaving flowers and letters. On television screens, anchors spoke in hushed tones, and across the Commonwealth, questions began to rise. If Charles could no longer serve, who would lead next, and what would become of the monarchy itself? Inside Buckingham Palace, one truth was clear. Princess Anne's confirmation had done more than just reveal the king's condition. It had ignited the beginning of a new royal reckoning. Every member of the family was now forced to confront their place in a future they hadn't planned for. The crown was trembling, and its fate now hung between loyalty, legacy, and the relentless passage of time. The royal reckoning. The palace gates loomed larger than ever, their black iron frames glinting faintly beneath the London sky, standing like silent witnesses to a secret unraveling within. Guards stood motionless in their posts, yet even their stoic faces couldn't conceal the tension gripping Buckingham Palace. Inside, whispers moved like ghosts through corridors lined with portraits of kings and queens past. Princess Anne's revelation had struck at the heart of the monarchy's fragile calm. It wasn't a scandal, not yet, but it was enough to make even the most loyal courtiers uneasy. The air itself seemed heavier, as though the walls could sense that history was shifting once again. Behind the closed doors of her private drawing room, Queen Camilla sat in a solitude she had never feared until now. A single sheet of paper lay on the polished mahogany table before her, the official palace statement. She had read it countless times, but the words still cut deep. His Majesty will be stepping back temporarily from public duties to focus on his health. The phrasing was delicate, crafted with precision, but Camilla knew better. In the coded language of the monarchy, temporary was rarely temporary. It was the prelude to transition, to the beginning of an ending. She set the paper down, her manicured fingers trembling slightly. Memories of the past flooded her mind, the decades of judgment, the relentless headlines, the battle for acceptance. She had endured the world's anger, the nation's doubt, and the ghost of Diana's shadow, all to stand where she did now as queen consort beside the man she had loved for half her life. Yet now, just as the crown had settled securely on her husband's head, it seemed to be slipping again, inch by inch, toward another pair of hands, William's and Catherine's. Camilla straightened her posture, her reflection in the mirror catching her eye. She saw not just a queen, but a survivor, one who understood power's most dangerous truth. It was never taken all at once. Influence vanished quietly, piece by piece, disguised as duty, responsibility, and public favor, and she could already feel the shift beneath her feet. In the East Wing, Prince William sat in a meeting that was far from ordinary. The air was thick with careful words and heavy intentions. Around the long table, senior advisors and private secretaries exchanged quiet glances, their tone measured but grave. The conversation was no longer about garden parties or overseas visits. It was about continuity, constitutional procedure, and the preservation of the monarchy itself. "Your Royal Highness," one advisor said cautiously, "if His Majesty's recovery remains uncertain, the Crown must ensure stability. There may need to be an adjustment in public representation." William didn't flinch. His jaw tightened, but his expression remained calm. He understood what they were truly saying, that the palace was preparing for his gradual ascendancy. He leaned forward, his voice steady. "Whatever is done," he said, "must be done with respect for my father's service and with complete transparency to the people." Yet beneath his composure, emotion stirred like a storm. He wasn't just an heir being groomed for kingship, he was a son watching his father's strength fade, a man caught between duty and love, tradition and change. The moment he had trained for all his life was arriving, and it felt far colder than he had imagined. Meanwhile, Princess Anne moved through her royal duties with her usual discipline, opening hospitals, attending ceremonies, shaking hands with quiet dignity. Yet beneath that unshakable composure, a war of conscience brewed. It had been her words, her confirmation of Charles's condition, that had set this chain of events in motion. She had spoken out of duty, not ambition, wanting to protect the integrity of the crown. But now, as she watched the palace machinery shift and grind toward transition, she wondered if she had done the right thing. Still, Anne knew one truth above all: silence could destroy just as easily as honesty could. When the royal family gathered at Clarence House, the air carried the weight of centuries. Only the most senior members were present: King Charles, Queen Camilla, Princess Anne, Prince William, and Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Curtains were drawn, the fire burned low, and the silence before the conversation began felt almost ceremonial. Charles sat upright, though frailty lingered in his posture. His hands trembled slightly on the armrest, but his voice, when it came, was deliberate. "I know why we're here," he said softly, "but I will not be treated as though I am already gone." Camilla reached for his hand, her eyes full of quiet fear, but he gently withdrew it. "Anne," he continued, turning toward his sister, "you did what you believed was right. I know that." Anne nodded firmly. "You've carried the burden alone for too long, Charles. The nation deserves clarity." Charles's gaze dropped to the table. "The crown demands much," he murmured, "and it gives little in return." Then William spoke, his voice respectful but resolute. "Father, the crown also demands continuity. If you need time to rest, I can represent you temporarily." The word hung in the air like a blade. Camilla stiffened, her tone sharp. "Let's not talk of transitions while His Majesty still sits on the throne." Anne's voice cut through quietly but firmly. "It's not about replacing him, Camilla. It's about ensuring the monarchy remains stable." For a long moment, no one spoke. The ticking clock seemed to echo like thunder. Then Charles exhaled, eyes closing briefly. "Perhaps," he whispered, "it's time to think of what's best for the crown." Those words sealed the moment. Within days, palace sources confirmed that Prince William would take on a greater public role in support of His Majesty. It was the beginning of a new chapter not declared with fanfare, but whispered through corridors and across news headlines. Outside the palace gates, the world reacted in waves. Crowds gathered, some carrying flowers for the king, others cheering for William's quiet strength. Newspapers spoke of a seamless transition, though everyone knew it was anything but. Inside the palace, loyalties began to shift like tidal courtiers, aligning themselves with the rising power of the Prince and Princess of Wales, while a dwindling few clung to Camilla's court. The Queen Consort watched it all unfold from behind her curtained windows. Every headline praising William felt like a dagger, every photograph of Catherine stepping into new duties, a shadow over her legacy. Yet she refused to retreat. Power might be slipping, but she still had her allies, her influence, and her instinct for survival. She would adapt, as she always had. As night settled over Buckingham Palace, Princess Anne stood alone by her window, gazing out across the lights of London. The Thames shimmered below, calm and unknowing. The city slept peacefully, unaware that history had just turned its page. Inside the palace, the crown had begun its silent migration from one head to another. And though no bells tolled, no speeches declared it, every soul within those ancient walls could feel it. The reckoning had begun. The future of the crown. The first light of dawn spilled through the tall windows of Buckingham Palace, yet there was nothing peaceful about it. The air was thick with anticipation, the kind that makes even silence feel loud. Every corridor, every portrait, every guard seemed to hold its breath. Something irreversible was about to happen. The night before had changed everything. Now, there was no turning back. Inside the king's private study, the tension was almost sacred. Courtiers stood outside in nervous stillness, while within the heavy oak doors, only two people remained: King Charles and his sister, Princess Anne. The king sat by his desk, pale but composed, his trembling hand resting beside a folder stamped with the royal seal. Across it, in golden letters, were two words that would define history: Transition Protocols. Anne spoke quietly, her voice carrying both strength and sorrow. Charles, the decision you make today isn't about yourself. It's about the legacy that comes after us. The king lifted his weary gaze, eyes clouded with memory and duty. All my life, Anne, he said softly, I prepared to carry the crown. But maybe the crown was never meant to be carried forever. His words hung in the air like the toll of a bell. Then, without hesitation, he picked up his pen. One signature, one steady stroke, and the course of the monarchy changed. The paper didn't speak, but history had just turned a page. In another wing of the palace, Queen Camilla sat alone, her reflection flickering in the dim candlelight. She knew what had just happened. The walls had whispered it before anyone else could. Her eyes, once sharp with ambition, now shimmered with quiet resignation. Power was slipping away, but she didn't weep. She straightened her posture and murmured, almost to herself, "If I'm not remembered as a queen, let me be remembered as the woman who stood beside her king until the very end." Meanwhile, in a different corner of the palace, Prince William and Catherine sat together in stillness. The gravity of what lay ahead hung between them like a shadow. William stared out at the palace gardens, the morning light touching his face. "Everything is changing," he said, his voice low but steady. "But I don't want them to think we're taking something from him. We're protecting what's left." Catherine reached for his hand. "You're not just inheriting a crown," she said softly. "You're inheriting hope, and that might be harder to carry." Days later, the palace released a quiet statement. During His Majesty's ongoing recovery, public duties will be temporarily undertaken by His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales. Only one line, but it sent tremors through the nation. The media roared with speculation, headlines flashing across every screen. "The transition begins, William steps forward." Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace gates, some weeping, some praying, and others simply watching, aware they were witnessing the rebirth of a monarchy. In her private chamber, Princess Anne stood by the window, watching the same sunrise that had greeted her brother's decision. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Perhaps," she whispered, "this is what the crown must always be ready for, to change hands, but never lose its meaning." And so, it wasn't just a change of duty. It was the quiet end of an era. The monarchy was not dying, it was transforming. The weight of the past was making room for the promise of the future. But as the world watched, one question lingered. Could the crown survive in a world that no longer bows? Perhaps the answer lies not in palaces or thrones, but in people. Because a crown is more than gold and jewels. It's faith, it's loyalty, it's the enduring belief that even as time changes everything, dignity will always endure. If you believe that true royalty is not measured by power but by service and grace, share this story. Because some legacies don't fade with time. They rise again every time history begins a new chapter.